When does a journalist stop reporting the news and start committing a crime?
Mm-hmm.
It's a question that sounds like it belongs in, I don't know, a philosophy seminar, maybe a media ethics class.
Right.
But right now, it is the question at the absolute center of a federal firestorm.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We are really glad you're here.
It's good to be here.
Today, we are cutting through a lot of noise, and I mean a lot of noise, to get to the heart of a story that has the media world in a total panic and religious liberty advocates saying it's about time.
It is a fascinating case. And honestly, it's one where if you only read the headlines, you are getting maybe, 10% of the actual story?
Oh, at best.
You really have to open the documents to see what's going on.
Which is exactly what we're here to do. So let's set the scene with the news hook, just so everyone is on the same page. You've probably seen the alerts by now. Former CNN anchor Don Lemon.
Household name.
Yeah, a guy who was a primetime staple for years was arrested last Thursday. Federal agents picked him up at a hotel in Los Angeles. And just to be clear immediately, this wasn't, a ticket for jaywalking or some minor misunderstanding.
No, not at all. He has been indicted by a federal grand jury. The charges are heavy. We're talking about conspiracy against rights and violating something called the FACE Act.
Right.
Now, usually when people hear FACE Act, they think of abortion clinics, right?
That's where you hear it most.
Right.
It stands for Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances. But, and this is the part people forget, that law also applies to places of worship. It protects your right to walk into a church, a synagogue, or a mosque without being physically obstructed.
Okay, so that's the charge. The incident in question happened back on January 18th, 2026 at the city's church in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you turn on the TV right now or scroll through, social media, you are hearing a lot of people screaming that this is an unprecedented attack on the press.
That is the narrative. He was just holding a microphone.
But we have the actual indictment right here in our stack of sources. And when you actually read what the Department of Justice is alleging, it tells a completely different story.
It really does. The indictment alleges that Lemon didn't just show up to film a protest. It alleges he conspired, that's a legal term, conspired with activists to launch a takeover-style attack on a Christian worship service.
That is a massive distinction. So this deep dive is about finding that line. It's about the collision between the First Amendment right to a free press and the First Amendment right to worship God in peace.
And the stakes honestly couldn't be higher. This is Constitutional Law 101 coming to life.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because I think for most of us, when we hear Don Lemon arrested, we conjure up an image of a guy standing on a public sidewalk holding a microphone,
Right.
maybe shouting a tough question at a politician walking by. That's the standard picture of aggressive journalism, right?
It is. And if that were the case, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But the sources paint a much, much more chaotic picture.
So take us back to St. Paul. What exactly was Operation Pullup?
So Operation Pullup was the specific operational name given to this plan by the organizers. It wasn't a spontaneous gathering.
Not at all.
The target was the city's church in St. Paul. The reason they targeted this specific church was that a pastor there allegedly works for ICE Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
So the motivation was explicitly political from the jump.
Explicitly.
Yeah.
The organizers advertised it as an anti-IC action. And the indictment is very clear. This was not a silent vigil where people stood outside with signs.
Yeah.
The allegation is that 20 to 40 agitators entered the sanctuary to, and I'm quoting the indictment here, disrupt business as usual.
Disrupt business as usual. See, that phrase stands out to me. Because in a retail store, business as usual is selling clothes. In a church, business as usual is prayer. It's worship. It's a sacred moment.
Exactly. And the source material describes a scene of total chaos inside. You have people blowing whistles inside the sanctuary.
In the sanctuary.
You have chants of eyesight out, screaming through the room. The service literally had to stop. They couldn't hear the sermon. They couldn't pray.
And reading through the documents, there is one detail that just hit me in the gut. I mean, it really stopped me cold.
I think I know which one you mean.
The children.
Yes. It's hard to read. The indictment mentions that congregants fled out of fear for their safety. Some were trying to get to the child care area to save their kids.
Because they didn't know what was happening.
They didn't know if this was a protest or an attack. Because in 2026, if a group of 40 people storm a building screaming, you don't assume peaceful protest.
You assume the worst.
And there is a specific quote in the legal documents from a child who asked if their parents were going to die.
That's terrifying. See, that's where this shifts for me. It stops being about politics and starts being about trauma.
It's intimidation,
Yeah.
plain and simple. And that is exactly where these federal charges come from.
But let's play the other side for a second. Because Don Lemon has a defense. He says, and I'm quoting his team here, that he was just there to chronicle the event.
Right.
He's a reporter. There is even video of him telling the pastor, "I'm not with the group." He's claiming the status of an observer.
And that is a standard defense for a journalist. I'm just the fly on the wall. I don't make the news. I just record it.
But the grand jury looked at the evidence and essentially said, no, you weren't a fly. You were part of the swarm.
Okay, that's a strong metaphor. But why? What makes him think he was a participant and not just a reporter?
It comes down to the active verbs in the indictment. The government alleges this was a conspiracy. And to prove conspiracy, you look for what are called overt acts.
Overt acts. Okay, break that down.
The first big one is the planning. The indictment alleges Lemon didn't just stumble upon this protest happening in the street. He attended a pre-op briefing with the activists.
A briefing? Where?
In a parking lot at a Cub Foods.
Wait, a Cub Foods? Like the grocery store?
The grocery store. There's something so bizarrely specific about that. You have a famous TV anchor meeting with a group of radical activists in a grocery store parking lot to go over the battle plan.
It sounds like something out of a spy novel, doesn't it? But the allegation is that he was there while they were receiving instructions on how to conduct the takeover. He knew the plan. He knew the target. He knew the goal was disruption.
That definitely sounds like more than just reporting. That sounds like joining the team.
And then there is the live stream itself. This is where Lemon's own reporting is being used as evidence against him. The indictment cites him telling his audience, "We can't say too much. We don't want to give it up."
We.
He said we.
He used the word we.
Right.
And he stepped away from the microphone at certain points so he wouldn't reveal the location on air before they arrived. The prosecution is arguing that is operational secrecy.
Operational secrecy? For a news story, that sounds like he's trying to protect the mission
Precisely.
rather than just get the scoop. If you are a reporter, your loyalty is to the audience. You tell them what is happening. If you are keeping secrets to help the activists pull off a surprise attack, you aren't reporting. You're aiding and abetting.
So the argument is, if you help the disruptors keep their secret so the disruption works, you aren't a reporter anymore. You are an accomplice.
Correct. You have crossed the line from observer to participant.
Let's zoom in on what happened once they actually breached the building, because this is where it gets really interesting to me. We aren't just talking about him standing in the back with a camera, right?
No. This is where the indictment gets very granular.
Yeah.
We need to look at overt act number 24 and overt act number 28.
Walk us through those.
So overt act 24. The allegation is that Lemon stood in the main aisle, physically obstructing the space. He got so close to the pastor, who was trying to lead a service, that the pastor's hand actually grazed him.
He was in the pastor's face.
Right in his personal bubble. And when the pastor's hand grazed him, Lemon reportedly admonished the pastor. He said, "Please don't push me."
Wait, hold on. He invades the pastor's personal space during a worship service and then plays the victim when they bump.
That is the allegation.
Right.
It creates a scene. It escalates the tension. It makes it about him rather than the service.
It sounds like he was trying to provoke a reaction for the camera.
That is certainly one interpretation. And then there is overt act 28. This is about blocking the exits. And this is the part that legally puts him in very hot water regarding the FACE Act.
Right, because you cannot block people from leaving.
The indictment says Lemon positioned himself at the main door. As congregants were trying to leave, remember, these are people trying to flee a chaotic situation where children are crying, he allegedly physically obstructed them.
Wow.
He confronted them with facts about immigration policy while they were trying to get out.
So imagine this. Your mother. You're terrified. You're trying to get your kid out the door. And a famous TV anchor is standing in the doorway refusing to move, trying to debate you on immigration policy.
That is the picture the grand jury saw. And there is one more thing Lemon said on his live stream that the prosecutors are highlighting. He noted that a young man in the church looked frightened, scared, and was crying.
He saw the fear. He acknowledged it.
He saw it, and his commentary was that this trauma was the purpose of the operation. He admitted he knew the goal was disruption and discomfort.
That is chilling. It really challenges the idea that he was just a neutral observer. But I want to push back a little bit here, just to play devil's advocate.
Go for it.
Journalists do break rules to get stories sometimes, don't they? I mean, if I'm embedded with a platoon, I'm planning with them. If I'm filming a sit-in at a college, I'm technically trespassing. If we criminalize getting close to the action, don't we kill field reporting?
That is a fantastic question. It
Yeah.
really is the core of the defense. And to answer it, we have to look at the legal theory. There is a really interesting analysis from the Volokh conspiracy.
Oh, yeah, the legal blog.
Yeah, by Eugene Volokh, who is a brilliant legal scholar. He uses a burglary analogy, and I think this clears it up perfectly.
Okay, lay it on us. How does he explain the difference?
Imagine a group of burglars plans to break into a jewelry store.
Okay, I'm with you.
Now, if you're a journalist and you just happen to be walking by and you see them breaking the window and you pull out your phone and film it, you're fine. You are reporting on a crime in progress.
Right. That's citizen journalism.
But imagine you met with the burglars in the parking lot beforehand. Imagine you looked at the blueprints. Imagine you agreed to walk in with them and hold the door open so they could carry the TV out, all while you were filming.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, does holding a camera make you a reporter? Or are you just a lookout who happens to be filming?
You're a lookout. You're part of the crew.
Exactly. The camera doesn't grant you immunity from general laws. You cannot help commit a crime just because you're filming it.
And the crime here isn't burglary. It's violating civil rights.
Exactly. The statutes are 18 U.S.C. Section 241, which is Conspiracy Against Rights, and the FACE Act. These laws are designed to protect religious liberty. The government's argument is Lemon didn't just record a crime. He helped execute a plan to strip these citizens of their right to worship.
That is a heavy charge. And obviously, the media reaction has been explosive. They are circling the wagons.
To say the least.
I'm looking at headlines here. The Guardian is calling this a dangerous escalation and an affront to the First Amendment. The New Republic calls it a show arrest to excite the Magi base.
And those are the talking points you will hear on the nightly news. But we need to contrast that with the perspective found in the legal sources. There are some key facts the media is glossing over.
What are they missing?
First, the grand jury. The New Republic mentions a magistrate judge initially refused the warrant, but the Deputy Chief of Staff, James Blair, made a very specific point about this. He criticized the media for hiding the fact that Lemon was indicted by a grand jury.
Remind us again why that matters. What is the difference between a prosecutor charging you and a grand jury indicting you?
A magistrate judge is one person. A grand jury is a group of citizens, your peers. They sat in a room, they watched the video, they heard the testimony about the pre-op briefing at Cub Foods, and they voted. They said, yes, there is probable cause to believe a crime was committed.
So a group of normal citizens looked at this behavior and said, that's not journalism, that's a crime.
Correct. And then there is the protected class myth. There is this pervasive idea in the media, and you see it in these headlines, that having a press badge gives you a force field.
Like a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Exactly. Like, I can block this door because I'm from CNN. But the law doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
As the Volokh analysis points out, if you break speech-neutral laws against blocking doors, laws against intimidation, trespassing, you are liable. You can't block a church door just because you have a YouTube channel.
That seems like common sense to a lot of people outside the media bubble. But what about the argument that Lemon is being targeted? He's a vocal critic of the president. Is this selective prosecution?
This is where we get into the weeds of the Wisconsin Law Review source.
Yeah.
It is a very technical legal argument, but it's important.
Break it down for us.
Basically, proving selective prosecution is virtually impossible. You have to prove two things: discriminatory effect and discriminatory purpose.
Okay.
To prove discriminatory effect, you have to prove that other people who were critics of the president did the exact same thing, blockaded a church, terrified kids, met with conspirators, and weren't prosecuted.
And that is hard to prove because, well, most reporters don't blockade churches.
Exactly. That's the catch. If you don't have a comparable group of people getting off scot-free for doing the same illegal thing, the argument falls apart. And the reality is, most courts won't dismiss a case just because the prosecutor might not like the defendant. The core question remains, did the defendant actually commit the crime?
So the conservative viewpoint here is pretty simple. If you don't want to be prosecuted for disrupting a church, don't disrupt a church.
It really does boil down to personal responsibility. You are responsible for your actions, regardless of your job title or your politics.
So let's zoom out. What does this all mean for the big picture?
Yeah.
Because Don Lemon is facing some serious time here.
He is. He is facing up to 10 years in federal prison.
That is massive. That ends a career.
It is. But we have to remember what is on the other side of the scale. This isn't just about asking rude questions. The allegation is that he helped plan and execute a takeover of a sacred space.
And the evidence isn't just witness testimony, it is his own live stream.
His own words. We can't say too much, The purpose is trauma. You can't unsay that.
So for you listening to this, why does this matter? Why should you care about a reporter getting arrested in Minnesota?
It matters because it tests the limits of what we call advocacy journalism.
What do you mean by that?
We have seen a shift in the last decade where journalists aren't just reporting on the protest. They are aligning themselves with the cause. They are becoming activists with press passes. They want to be part of the movement. This case draws a hard line in the sand. It says you can advocate, but you can't violate rights.
Precisely. The First Amendment protects the press? Absolutely. But it also protects the pew. It protects the person sitting in that church service praying for their family. When the press attacks the pew, the law has to step in.
That is such a powerful way to put it. The press versus the pew. And if we don't have that line, then freedom of the press just becomes the freedom to bully.
That's something I can't shake. The double standard.
That is the question I keep coming back to.
If the roles were reversed.
Exactly. Imagine if a conservative activist, say someone with a MAGA hat, went to a major newsroom.
And stood in the doorway.
Stood in the doorway, blocked the reporters from leaving, shouted at them while they were trying to work, terrified the staff, and live streamed it all while admitting they planned it in a parking lot. Would the media call that reporting?
I think we know the answer.
They would call it terrorism. They would call it an insurrection. They would demand federal charges.
They absolutely would. The headlines would be apocalyptic.
So why is it different when it happens at a church? That is the question this case forces us to ask. Why is a church fair game, but a newsroom is sacred ground?
And that is a question I think we are going to be wrestling with for a long time as this case goes to trial.
It really is.
We want to thank you for listening. We know there is a lot of spin out there, and our goal is always to help you look at the facts, the actual documents, not just the headlines.
Read the documents. That is where the truth is.
Absolutely. Keep learning, stay curious, and we'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.